Welcome to our deep dive, and today we're tackling workshops.
Mm.
Brought to you, of course, by Birch and Palm.
Oh, workshop.
Yeah, sometimes you just need a really clear and simple understanding of something
Right.
without having to go through like a million pages of information.
Yes.
So that's our mission today, giving you like the inside scoop on workshops, but specifically as a business analysis technique.
Okay.
And don't forget to check out www.birchandpalms.org
Of course.
for a ton more resources. Really level up your professional skills.
I think it's fascinating how workshops have become like so common in business, but a lot of people might not even realize they've already been in one.
Oh, that's so true.
Yeah.
We've all probably been part of, a brainstorming session.
Brainstorming,
Or
yeah.
a project kickoff meeting, right?
Yeah.
But we might not have thought of those as workshops.
Exactly.
Yeah.
At their core, a workshop is a structured meeting with a facilitator. And it's where people come together to work towards a specific goal.
So it's not just about talking and sharing ideas. It's about actually creating something concrete,
Exactly.
like a plan,
A plan, yeah.
a design,
A design, a decision.
a decision, something beyond just like a good discussion.
Precisely. That's one of the key strengths of workshops.
Okay.
They're action-oriented. They aim to move beyond just discussion.
Into results.
Into concrete results.
I'm starting to see why workshops are so valuable, but I
Yeah.
think let's break it down a little bit further.
Sure.
What are the essential elements that make a workshop truly successful?
Well, I think first and foremost, you need a very clear purpose.
Okay.
Everyone involved needs to understand, like, what is the goal? What are we trying to achieve with this workshop?
So no more vague meeting invites that leave everyone wondering what they're supposed to be doing.
Right. And then you need preparation.
Okay.
Workshops require, I think, a level of planning that goes beyond your average meeting.
Yep.
So, a well-defined agenda keeps things on track.
Okay.
The right materials ensures that things go smoothly.
Yeah.
And then clearly define roles for everyone involved ensures a coordinated effort.
This makes total sense. It's like that saying, failing to plan is planning to fail.
Absolutely. And speaking of roles, there are a few key players in a workshop.
Okay.
You have the sponsor. This is the person who's ultimately responsible for the workshop's success.
Okay.
Then you have the facilitator,
Right.
who's acting as a guide, making sure discussions are smooth, adhering to ground rules.
Yep.
Then you have the scribe,
Yeah.
diligently documenting the outputs. And of course, you have the participants.
Right.
They're the heart of the workshop. They're the ones who are bringing their expertise, their insights, their ideas to the table.
Wow. So it's a real team effort.
It is.
I'm already starting to think about the different people that I'd want to involve in a workshop, for
Well,
different parts of an organization.
Yeah, that's a good point. And this actually highlights another key aspect of workshops, the fact that they bring together different perspectives.
Okay, so instead of siloed thinking and individual efforts, you've got a group of people
Yeah,
with different backgrounds and experiences
absolutely.
all coming together to tackle a problem or explore some new opportunity.
And that can be incredibly powerful.
Yeah, it sounds really powerful.
And it can lead to more creative solutions,
Okay.
more well-rounded solutions because you have all these different viewpoints. Also, workshops can act as a decision-making accelerator.
Okay.
So instead of decisions getting bogged down,
Endless email chains.
yeah, endless emails, drawn-out meetings,
Yeah.
workshops can streamline that process, get everyone focused on a shared goal, and then they can reach a consensus more effectively.
In today's fast-paced world, being able to make decisions quickly, but also in a really informed way, that's got to be a huge advantage.
Huge, absolutely. And another key benefit is just the boost in engagement that workshops can provide.
Okay.
When people are actively involved in shaping the outcomes, they feel a sense of ownership and buy-in.
Right. If you're just being told what to do,
Yeah.
it's easy to feel disconnected.
Yeah,
But if you're actually part of the process, you're invested in the outcome.
absolutely.
Yeah.
And that sense of ownership can be incredibly valuable, for tackling a wide range of challenges. Workshops they're incredibly versatile.
Okay.
They can be applied to all sorts of situations, gathering requirements for a new project, designing innovative solutions, solving really complex problems, or even developing strategic plans.
So it's like having this Swiss Army knife
It is.
of business analysis techniques. But before we get too carried away with all the amazing things that workshops can do,
Right.
let's be realistic. I imagine there are some potential pitfalls to be aware of,
Right.
right?
Of course. Like any tool, workshops are most effective when they're used wisely,
Okay.
with a good understanding of their limitations.
Okay.
And one common challenge is scheduling,
Oh, yeah.
getting everyone together
Yeah.
at the same time.
Especially with, large or remote teams, that's got to be a nightmare.
It can be a logistical nightmare. Another potential pitfall is facilitator dependence.
Oh.
A
Sure.
poorly facilitated workshop
Yeah.
can really go off the rails,
Yeah.
wasted time, frustration.
That makes me think about how important it is to choose the right facilitator, someone who can really guide the group effectively.
Exactly. And then finally, there's the risk of process over substance.
Okay.
So you can get so caught up
In the mechanics.
in the mechanics of the workshop
Right.
that you might overlook valuable insights
Yeah.
or stifle critical discussions.
So it's all about finding that balance
It is.
between structure
Yes.
and flexibility,
Absolutely.
ensuring the workshop stays productive, but also allowing for, those aha moments to kind of emerge.
Yeah, you got it.
Being aware of these pitfalls, I think, really allows you to plan carefully
Right.
and set your workshop up for success.
Absolutely.
This has been so insightful. We've covered so much ground already. We've talked about what a workshop is,
Yeah.
the key elements, the benefits, the pitfalls. Wow. And remember, Virgin Palms has even more resources on their website,
Absolutely.
www.virginpalms.org. Before we move on to the next part of our deep dive, where we'll really get into some specific use cases for workshops, let's just take a quick pause.
Okay.
What are you thinking so far?
Yeah. What's standing out to you?
Yeah. What questions or thoughts are bubbling up?
Yeah, as we continue to explore this world of workshops,
Yeah.
think about how this information kind of resonates with your own experiences, how you might apply these concepts to your own work.
We'll be back in a flash with part 2, so stick around. Welcome back to our deep dive into the world of workshops. In part 1, we kind of laid the groundwork, exploring what workshops are, their key elements, and all the benefits they bring.
Yeah.
Now let's shift gears a little bit and look at some specific examples of how workshops can be used to, tackle real-world business analysis challenges.
It's really fascinating to see how versatile workshops can be, adapting to all sorts of situations.
So let's start with a classic use case, requirements gathering.
Okay, yeah.
So imagine you're developing a brand new CRM system, customer relationship management,
Right.
for a large sales team.
Okay.
How could a workshop help you gather all the essential requirements?
Well, I think first things first, you need to get the right people in the room.
Okay.
So that might be sales reps, sales managers, marketing folks, customer service representatives,
Yeah.
even IT specialists, anyone who's familiar with the existing CRM system.
So a really diverse group that represents all the key stakeholders who actually use the CRM.
Exactly. You want to capture all of those different perspectives and experiences.
Makes sense.
And then the workshop itself might involve brainstorming sessions to identify all the features and functionalities that are essential for the new CRM.
Okay.
You could also use techniques like user story mapping
Yeah.
to visually represent that customer journey.
Right.
Make sure the new system addresses all the critical touch points.
I'm picturing like a room full of sticky notes
Yeah.
and people excitedly sharing their ideas.
It can be. It can be very energizing. And of course, clear documentation is really crucial throughout this whole process. The scribe plays a vital role in capturing all those requirements
Yeah.
in a way that's clear, concise, and easy for everyone to understand.
So it's not just about the workshop itself, but also about making sure that everything that came out of the workshop is communicated effectively
Absolutely. Yeah.
to everyone.
Now, let's move on to another really common use of workshops, solution design.
Okay.
So let's say a company is struggling with high employee turnover,
Okay.
and they figured out that, a lack of career development opportunities is a major factor.
Right.
How could a workshop help them design a solution to this?
I'm already intrigued. What would that look like?
Well, you would start by bringing together a diverse group of people.
Okay.
HR representatives, department managers, high-performing employees,
Okay.
and, you know what? Even those who've recently resigned.
That's interesting that you would include people who have actually left the company.
I think their insights can be particularly valuable
Yeah.
in understanding, The reasons behind the turnover.
Yeah, their perspective is unique.
Unique, often overlooked.
Yeah.
During the workshop, you might brainstorm ideas for career development programs. Things like mentoring initiatives, skills training workshops, internal job posting systems. Techniques like affinity diagramming can be used to group similar ideas together and identify those recurring themes or patterns.
So you're not just throwing out ideas, you're actually organizing them
Exactly.
and analyzing them
Yeah.
in a way that leads to a more concrete solution.
The goal is to move beyond brainstorming.
Into concrete action.
Concrete planning and action, yes.
I see.
By the end of that workshop, ideally, you'd have a plan
Right.
for implementing those solutions.
Timelines and resources.
Timelines, resource allocation, success metrics, all of that.
I'm starting to get it.
Yeah.
Workshops provide that framework for moving from a problem to a solution.
They do.
And then into action.
Exactly. Now, let's shift our focus to problem solving.
Okay.
Imagine a company is seeing customer satisfaction going down.
Okay.
They've done their research, they've identified some areas for improvement, but they're just struggling to prioritize what to do.
Right.
And come up with an effective plan. How can a workshop help them?
This feels so relevant,
Yeah.
to so many businesses today because customer satisfaction is, it's everything. How would you approach this with a workshop?
Well, you'd gather a cross-functional team.
Okay.
Customer service, marketing, product development, operations, you name it.
So all the different departments that might touch the customer experience in some way.
In some way, exactly. The workshop might start with a review of the customer satisfaction data,
Okay.
followed by brainstorming sessions to pinpoint those root causes.
I'm imagining techniques like the 5 whys or maybe a fishbone diagram would be really helpful here to dig deeper.
Exactly, you're spot on. Once those root causes are identified, then the workshop can move into solution mode.
Okay.
Participants can brainstorm potential actions to address each of those issues,
Right.
and then prioritize them using techniques like a prioritization matrix or an impact effort grid.
So you're breaking down this complex problem into smaller, more manageable pieces.
Exactly.
And then working through those pieces in a really systematic way to find solutions.
And the facilitator, remember, plays a key role in guiding the group through this entire process.
Right.
Keeping the discussions focused, keeping them productive, and making sure that the workshop stays on track.
So the facilitator really is like the linchpin
Yeah, I think so.
of a successful workshop. They need to be skilled in both, the content and the process of facilitation.
Absolutely. Now, let's talk about another area where workshops can be really valuable, strategic planning.
Okay.
So let's say a company is getting ready to launch a new product line.
Okay.
How can a workshop help with that?
This is such a critical stage for any company,
It is.
really setting the foundation for future success.
It's make or break. In this scenario, the strategic planning workshop, you'd want to involve key stakeholders.
Okay.
Executives, product managers, marketing experts, financial analysts, everybody.
Right. Everyone who needs to be involved in that decision-making process.
Exactly. It might start with a review of the company's overall strategic goals and objectives,
Good.
followed by brainstorming sessions to generate ideas for those new products.
I'm seeing techniques like SWOT analysis and market research being really valuable here.
Absolutely, yeah.
Understanding the competitive landscape,
Understanding the market.
the target market.
Yes.
Well, all of that.
The workshop could then move into actually developing a strategic plan.
Okay.
So outlining the product roadmap,
Mm-hmm.
target markets, the marketing strategies, pricing strategies,
Right.
even financial projections.
So the workshop is really providing that structured space to craft a plan.
A collaborative and structured space.
A plan for launching that new product line.
Precisely. And remember, one of the greatest things about workshops is that they bring together those different perspectives, they foster that collaboration, and they help generate those tangible outcomes.
It's incredible to see how workshops can be used in so many different ways.
Yeah.
From gathering requirements to designing solutions to problem solving to strategic planning. It really is like a toolkit for tackling just about any business need.
It is. And we'll be back in a moment to wrap up our deep dive with some final tips and best practices.
Welcome back to the final part of our deep dive into workshops. We've explored, the what, the why, and the how of this really versatile business analysis technique.
Yeah.
Now let's wrap things up with some really practical tips and best practices, to make sure your workshops are truly effective.
One of the most overlooked aspects of workshop design is, I think, the environment itself,
Yes.
whether it's a physical space or a virtual space.
Right.
It needs to be a space that's conducive to collaboration.
That makes sense. You can't expect people to be creative and productive if they're crammed into a tiny room
Mhm.
or, struggling to hear each other on a glitchy video conference.
Exactly. So for in-person workshops, think about having plenty of natural light, comfortable seating, space for people to move around and interact.
Yeah.
And don't forget all the essentials, whiteboards, flip charts, sticky notes.
Those brainstorming tools.
Yeah, like all those
Got it.
tools that can help spark creativity and capture those ideas.
And for virtual workshops, it's super important to have, reliable video conferencing platform and some collaborative tools like, an online whiteboard
Yes,
or mind mapping software.
absolutely. But the physical or virtual space is just the starting point.
Right.
It's equally important to create like a safe and inclusive environment
Yeah.
where everyone feels comfortable sharing their thoughts and ideas, even if they're a little bit out there.
That reminds me of something I read in the Mastering Business Analysis Techniques Guide.
Yeah.
They emphasize the importance of setting ground rules
Yes.
to encourage respectful communication, active listening, and just like open-mindedness.
That's so important, and the facilitator really plays a crucial role in setting the tone and establishing those ground rules. It's about creating that atmosphere of trust and collaboration.
Where everyone feels valued.
Yeah. And respected. Which, actually, brings us to the facilitator.
Yeah.
We've talked about how important they are,
Yeah.
but I'm curious to hear a little bit more about, the specific skills
Yeah.
and qualities that make a great workshop facilitator. What are you looking for?
Well, the ideal facilitator, they need a diverse set of skills.
Okay.
They need to be knowledgeable about the topic at hand, of course, but they also need to be really skilled in group facilitation techniques. They need to be able to guide the discussion, keep the group focused, manage time effectively, and be able to resolve conflicts constructively.
So it sounds like they need to be part subject matter expert,
Hmm.
part diplomat, part timekeeper, and part cheerleader.
Yeah, you could say that.
Wow, it's a lot.
It's a demanding role, but it's crucial. A skilled facilitator can really make all the difference in creating a really productive and engaging workshop experience.
Okay, so we've talked about the environment, we've talked about the facilitator. What about the actual content and activities within the workshop itself? How do you choose, the right techniques and exercises to achieve those desired outcomes?
That's where it gets really interesting because there's a whole toolbox of techniques available.
Okay.
And the best choice really depends on the purpose of the workshop and the complexity of the topic.
Right, we've already mentioned a few, like brainstorming,
Brainstorming, yeah.
user story mapping,
Affinity diagramming.
the 5 whys,
Yeah.
fishbone diagrams. I'm sure there are tons more.
Oh, tons.
Yeah.
You could use dot voting to prioritize ideas, role-playing to explore different perspectives, even simulations to test potential solutions in a safe environment.
So many possibilities.
So many, yeah.
It seems like the key is to choose techniques that are engaging,
Yes.
relevant to the topic,
Yes.
and appropriate for the group's size and experience level.
Exactly, and it's not about trying to cram in as many techniques as possible.
Right.
Choose a few that really align with your objectives,
Okay.
and then give people enough time for each activity.
And this brings up another tip, I think, from the guide, and that's don't forget to factor in breaks.
Yes, breaks are essential.
Yeah.
Just to maintain those energy levels and prevent mental fatigue. It gives participants a chance to step away, process information, and then come back refreshed and ready to engage.
And breaks can also provide, opportunities for informal networking and relationship building,
Yeah,
which can really strengthen that collaborative spirit of the workshop.
absolutely. Now let's talk about documentation.
Okay.
We've talked about the scribe's role in capturing the workshop's outputs, but documentation isn't something that should just end when the workshop is over.
Right. The Business Analysis Techniques for Professionals guide also emphasized sharing the outcomes of the workshop
Yes.
with everyone who participated.
With everyone and any relevant stakeholders as well.
Right. So everyone's on the same page.
Exactly. Everyone needs to be on the same page about the decisions that were made.
The actions to be taken.
And it's crucial to follow up on those action items.
Yeah.
Assigning owners and deadlines to make sure that the momentum from the workshop actually translates into, concrete results.
So accountability and follow-through are key.
They are.
Otherwise, the workshop could just end up being like a really fun brainstorming session with no real impact.
It's all about turning those insights and ideas into actions.
This has been such an insightful deep dive. We've covered so much. We talked about the environment, the facilitator, the content, the importance of documentation and follow-up. It's been a fantastic journey. Any final words of wisdom for our listeners who are now, ready to go out and put all this knowledge into practice?
I would say remember that workshops are a really powerful tool for collaboration and problem solving, but their effectiveness really relies on careful planning, thoughtful execution, and a commitment to continuous improvement. Don't be afraid to experiment and learn from your experiences.
And of course, don't forget to check out www.virginpalms.org. That's the organization that's brought us this deep dive. Their website is full of resources to help you really master the art of workshops and tons of other business analysis techniques.
It's a great resource.
So embrace that collaborative spirit, experiment with different techniques, learn from your experiences, and use workshops to drive positive outcomes for your projects and your organization.
I think that's a great note to end on.
Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the world of workshops. We hope you've gained some valuable insights, and we're excited to see how you'll use this powerful technique to really elevate your business analysis game.